Most small charities do not really have a volunteer shortage. They have a volunteer message that never quite reaches the right person. There are people near you right now who would gladly give a Saturday morning to a cause like yours if only they knew you existed, understood what you needed, and felt sure they would be welcomed rather than left standing in a corner. Finding those people and keeping them once they arrive is not really a matter of luck or charm. It is marketing in the most honest sense of the word, and that is what this video is about. One honest note before we begin. This channel is educational only. I am not affiliated with or endorsed by any platform, agency or program. And nothing here is an official partnership. Nothing in this video is legal advice, and it is certainly not advice on data protection or privacy law, which matters a great deal the moment you start collecting people's contact details. Because rules and platform features change over time. Please treat everything here as background, and always verify the current details with the official source before you rely on it. When a charity struggles to find volunteers, the instinct is to try harder, to ask more people more loudly more often. But the same discipline you would bring to finding donors or supporters applies just as well here. You are offering something, a chance to do meaningful work alongside good people, and someone out there is deciding whether to say yes. Marketing is simply the practice of understanding that person, describing what you offer in terms they care about, and making the next step easy to take. None of that becomes manipulative when the thing you are offering is genuinely good, and volunteering usually is. So we will walk the same path a marketer would, from defining the roles, to writing the message, to reaching the right people, to a simple sign-up, and finally to welcoming and keeping the people who say yes, because keeping a volunteer is worth far more than endlessly replacing one. Define the roles before you advertise them. The most common recruitment mistake is asking for help in general. A plea for volunteers, with no shape to it, quietly asks the reader to invent their own job, guess how much time it will take, and imagine whether they are qualified. And most people, faced with that much uncertainty, simply move on. So before you write a single word of outreach, define the roles the way an employer would define a job, only warmer. For each role, write down a short, plain name, the one or two things the person will actually do, roughly how much time it asks for, and how often, whether it happens at a fixed place or can be done from home, and what someone needs to bring, which is often nothing more than reliability and goodwill. Be honest about the ordinary parts. A role described truthfully attracts people who will stay, while a role dressed up to sound more exciting than it is mostly produces disappointment on both sides. And do define a range of roles, not one. Some people can give a steady few hours every week, while others can only manage a single afternoon a few times a year, and a good charity has a place for both kinds of generosity. Write your "Why Volunteer with Us" message. Once the roles are clear, you can write the message that draws people to them, and here the principle that guides all good charity marketing applies again. Lead with the person and the purpose, not with your own need. A weak appeal says the organization is short of hands and would be grateful for help. A strong one shows the volunteer who they would become and what their few hours would actually change, paint the specific picture. This is the person you would sit beside. This is the small concrete difference your morning makes. This is what you would walk away having done. People do not volunteer to fill a gap on your roster. They volunteer to belong to something, to use their hands and their time on something that matters, and often to be part of a warm group of others doing the same. Speak to that. Name the welcome they will receive, the guidance you will give so they never feel out of their depth, and the fact that they can start small and see how it feels, and keep it human. Write the way you would speak to a friend you were inviting along, because warmth is the thing that turns a reader into someone who actually shows up. We're ready to find the right people. Now take that message to where potential volunteers already are, rather than posting it once and hoping. Start with the warmest source of all, the supporters you already have, the people on your email list, your existing donors, and your current volunteers already believe in your cause, and many of them either have a little time to give or know someone who does, so ask them directly and make it easy to pass along. Next, look to your local community centers, places of worship, libraries, schools, and neighborhood groups are full of people who want to contribute close to home, and one real human conversation often does more than a dozen online posts. Use the one social channel you already sustain to share not just the call itself, but the stories of volunteers already with you, because people are drawn to join something that looks alive and welcoming. And consider the dedicated volunteer matching platforms, the websites and local schemes built specifically to connect willing people with organizations that need them. Wherever you post, respect people's privacy from the very first contact. Collect only the details you genuinely need. Tell people plainly how you will use them, and never share or repurpose someone's information without their clear agreement. Make the sign-up path simple. When someone finally decides to step forward, the moment is more fragile than it looks, and the clumsy sign-up process is where a surprising amount of goodwill quietly leaks away. Your job is to make saying yes almost effortless. Have one clear place for people to express interest, a short form or a simple message, asking only for the few details you truly need to take the next step, and nothing more. Resist the urge to demand a life history upfront. Then, and this is the part most charities miss, respond quickly and personally. A willing volunteer who hears nothing for 2 weeks assumes they were not really needed, and by the time you reach out, the moment has passed. A warm, prompt reply, even a short one, tells them their offer mattered and that a real person is glad they came forward. Tell them plainly what happens next, when they will hear from you, and what the first small step will be, so there is no anxious guessing. And handle whatever they share with care from the outset. Store their details safely, use them only for what the person agreed to, and let that visible respect for their privacy become part of the good first impression. Onboarding, so new volunteers stay. Recruiting a volunteer and keeping a volunteer are two different skills, and the second is where most of the value actually lies, because a person who stays for 2 years is worth far more than a stream of people who drift away after a single visit. The weeks right after someone joins decide which of those you get. Give every new volunteer a proper welcome rather than dropping them into the deep end on day one. A short, friendly introduction to the people, the place, and the way things are done removes the quiet dread of not knowing what to do or who to ask. Pair them with a friendly face for their first few sessions, someone whose only job is to make sure they never feel lost or in the way. Set clear, gentle expectations about what the role involves and does not involve, so no one burns out from doing more than they signed up for or feels underused and forgotten. And check in early after that first session with a simple, honest question about how it felt, because small problems solved in week 1 rarely become the silent departures of month 3. Appreciation that keeps people coming back. Beyond that first month, what keeps volunteers is far simpler and far cheaper than most people expect. It is feeling genuinely appreciated and knowing their work matters. You do not need a budget for this, you need attention and sincerity. Thank people specifically and often, not with a generic mass email, but by naming what they actually did and the difference it made. Show them the results of their effort, the meal that reached a family, the child who learned to read, the garden that got planted, so their hours connect to something real. Remember the small human things, a name, the reason they first joined. Celebrate milestones, a 100th hour, a first year, without turning it into a performance. And ask for their opinion now and then, because being listened to is one of the deepest forms of respect a person can feel. None of this is a technique to be gamed, and volunteers can tell the difference between genuine gratitude and a scripted thank you in an instant. But real, specific, consistent appreciation is quietly the most effective way to keep the people you already have, and it happens to be free. Volunteers become donors and advocates. There is one more reason to take all of this seriously, and it changes how you think about a volunteer entirely. The people who give you their time are among the most likely people in the world to eventually give you their support and their voice as well. Someone who has stood in your space, met the people you serve, and seen the work up close does not need to be convinced that your cause is real because they have lived it. That is why volunteers so often become your steadiest donors and your most believable advocates. The ones who tell friends, bring along colleagues, and speak up for you in rooms you will never enter. So think of recruitment not as filling a rota, but as the beginning of a long relationship with someone who may support your cause in half a dozen ways over the years. Treat every volunteer as a whole person and a lasting friend of the organization, rather than a pair of hands for a single task, and be careful never to make a generous person feel like a target. Do that, and the effort you put into finding, welcoming, and appreciating volunteers pays back for years, quietly in forms you did not plan for. Quick recap, let us pull it together. Treat volunteer recruitment as marketing, the honest kind, where you understand a person and make a genuinely good offer easy to accept. Define your roles clearly and truthfully before you advertise them. Write a why volunteer with us message that leads with the person and the purpose, not your own need. Take it to where people already are. Your existing supporters first, then your local community, your one social channel, and the volunteer matching platforms, respecting people's privacy at every step. Make the sign-up path short, then respond quickly and warmly. Onboard new volunteers with a real welcome, a friendly guide, and an early check-in. Then keep them with specific, sincere appreciation that costs nothing but attention. And remember that today's volunteer is often tomorrow's donor and advocate. So treat everyone as a lasting friend of your cause. None of this needs a big budget or a marketing degree. It needs clarity, warmth, and a little consistency. If this was useful, subscribe for practical charity marketing you can actually use, and I will keep turning it into plain, doable steps one video at a time.